February 3rd, 2024, MMA and the Bible. An interesting phenomenon has been taking place in the sports world of MMA. As you may know, MMA involves the mixing of martial arts such as wrestling, Jujitsu, boxing, Kung Fu, Judo and Karate, as well as Russian Sambo, and Thai kickboxing, as well as Brazilian Capoeira. And I may not be saying that right. This type of modern-style Roman Colosseum was introduced into the United States by way of the renowned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu family known as the Gracie clan, who learned the art of Jiu-Jitsu from a Japanese immigrant from Japan who arrived in Brazil at some point in time and who was known by his nickname of Count Conde. His real name was Maida. He would issue challenge fights, matches to any contenders of different styles of martial arts in Brazil. He would always win these challenge matches. He later met the Gracie clan and as a returned favor began training them in Jiu-Jitsu. The most prominent figure being Helio Gracie, a frail young man who later trained in this particular style of martial art. But being small and not that strong, he refined the techniques of Jiu-Jitsu in order to suit his smaller frame in order to defeat larger individuals. It turns out that this formula was a success, thus catapulting the Gracie clan into martial arts fame by continuing the legacy of Maida and issuing challenge matches to any who would volunteer to challenge the Gracies in Brazil. This form of fighting was known as Vale Tudo, no holds barred. When Rorion Gracie arrived in the United States, he, being the eldest and chief spokesman for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, continued to promote the same challenge fights in order to prove the superiority of his style. Famous names in the martial arts world were invited to participate, and some declined since they believed that martial arts was not so much about defeating any system, but for building character and were not interested in having any problems. Eventually, the idea of challenge matches started gaining media attention, and Rorion Gracie made connections with certain individuals in the media, and then UFC 1 was born. It was one big commercial for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In order to test the effectiveness of the Gracie clan claim, Rorion would use his brother Royce Gracie, who was somewhat like Helio, his father. He had a small frame. Different martial artists were invited to participate. There were wrestlers, kickboxers, as well as a sumo wrestler and a kung fu stylist, as well as a street brawler. Little Royce was able to prove the effectiveness of this Brazilian style and captured the attention of the world. But as all things changed in life, fighters became more knowledgeable about grappling as well as striking, and the UFC was brought to a higher level. First, it was the Brazilians that gained notoriety, and later fighters from different countries engaged in combat. Other organizations were formed, and to me, this meant that we were entering into an era marking the end of the age, the form of the Roman mindset, and the games of old being restored in the modern era. The Roman era was marked by the saying, "Give us bread and circus." In 2012, a new era began in the UFC, which was marked by the arrival of a Dagestani fighter from Russia named Khabib Nurmagomedov. His dad, Abdulmanap, was also a formidable fighter, a man that you cannot trifle with. He knew that he had to keep his son and the other children of Dagestan out of trouble in relation to the radical elements of their religion, which has separatist elements, which the Roman government won't tolerate. And so, as a way of keeping youth out of trouble, he would train the youth in combat Russian Sambo, a martial art with elements of judo, wrestling, striking, and kicking. Kabib's dad would make Kabib wrestle with bears. Kabib would say, "Dad, the bear bite me." And Dad would respond, "Bite him back." This was the type of training this young man was receiving in the high mountains of Dagestan, where men are exposed to the elements and thinner atmosphere, performing grueling exercises nonstop, as well as learning and in schoolwork. The American fighters that Kabib was encountering in the UFC could not match his indomitable character in both fighting and the will to win. He would maul them in the ring to the point that they were powerless and would submit, thus losing. Martial arts and the Bible. Some would say, why are you discussing martial arts and what does this have to do with the Bible? It first needs to be kept in mind that first and foremost, in the life of Kabib, religion is the most important factor. He gives honor and glory to the God of the Muslims publicly and says to the crowd, by way of symbolic gesturing, "I am nothing. He that is upstairs is greater." He doesn't drink and doesn't act dishonorable, and they place beautiful women around him, and he, from all appearances, sticks to his religion since he has a wife in Dagestan. The next question to be asked is the following. Is Kabib a warrior for Islam? The answer is yes, he is. What is Kabib really doing? Kabib is conducting spiritual warfare against America. When he defeated Conor McGregor, who attacked Kabib's honor as well as that of his father and religion, Kabib smashed him in the ring, and the whole world saw the defeat of Conor McGregor, who was representing the West. The defeat of Conor McGregor was a massive metaphor of the defeat of the West on account of the present trends in American society. I don't have to spell them out since we have seen the societal discipline of Dagestani men. Those who don't comprehend the lessons of a godly warrior fail to learn the lessons of David and Goliath. The great stories of David and his men and their fighting prowess, and the many men that only one of David's soldiers could take down. The exploits of these men of war were glorious because those victorious victories simply imply that it wasn't just the men. There was the supernatural element that aided their victories. Just like Samson. Samson was a super soldier. We all know the story of how the Spirit filled him with power and how many Philistines he took down. When the Israelite spies entered the land of Canaan, the men they encountered were giants, and the men of Israel resembled grasshoppers. Take note of the fact that these enemies of Israel were super soldiers. They could not have been natural humans. The Bible also mentions the Nephilim as men of renown, Genesis 6:4. Some other fighters who are from the same region as Kabib are saying they want to go to Palestine and fight. This reveals the underlying spiritual warfare that is taking place, and all the while those who are infatuated with bread and circus of Rome cannot perceive handwriting is on the wall. Yet the West will respond as predicted in Daniel 11:40-45, and a warrior is coming who goes by the moniker the King of the North. Mahalma. It was recently stated by an Islamic cleric that in the Mahalma, World War III, world of Islam, will no longer be respected. The Romans who aid the Muslims are the East Orthodox. That is what the cleric said. Could be the second portion of news from North and East. See Revelation 16:12. He stated the bear would be the new Rome and would win big time. This is consistent with the fatal wound and the eighth king's participation. Revelation 17:12-16 result equals the final formation of the 10 kings. The cleric mentioned that there will be true Christians that will extend the hand of friendship to them and that they should not turn them down. But is that the correct advice? Yes and no. No is where Christians who concede God as one, monotheism, with its Neoplatonist origins. Yes is where there is the testimony of He who made that recounts the depths of meaning with Revelation 13:8, and eternal righteousness of the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. That equals the Word, who in beginning was with God and arche. See the two divines, John 1:1. Again, the handwriting is on the wall for the Friday keepers, and the call is that of Revelation 18, 1-5, for all to board the 5:00 p.m. train of Matthew 20, and that includes the metaphor MMA fighters as well. See Hadith and Dajjal and the first angel's warning.